So, following on from the full card list reveals of Marshall D. Teach and Monkey D. Luffy's brand new structure decks, Shanks and Buggy, two more of the four Emperors, are joining the fray. What other tools possibly could one of the most represented decks from the past couple of formats need in Shanks? And will Buggy finally get that one card that it needs to unlock its full potential? We are going to find out, so let's dive right in. But before going further into the card list and the brand new decks themselves, I'd like to ask you to give a thumbs up on this video if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel as well, and turn on any of those notifications. Also, drop us a follow over on X at BenFitsLive. I also want to say a massive thank you as well for the reception on the initial video. As the time of recording, it's just reached over 150 views, which is crazy numbers for my first real kind of video getting into this. So thank you so much, and there is a lot more where this is coming from, don't you worry at all. So let's get into it. Let's start off with Shanks. If you are just tuning in and just catching up with all of the news from the One Piece card game, 6 brand new starter decks are going to be releasing alongside OP11, A Fist of Divine Fate, on June the 6th. Shanks, Buggy, Jewelry Bonnie, Yamato, Marshall D. Teach, and Purple Black Monkey D. Luffy will be the headlining leaders, and they are going to be similar to the starter decks that we had back when Premium Booster 1 The Best released. A swath of reprints as well as some brand new cards. So we're having a look at Shanks first off. Now, Shanks is a really interesting leader to choose to have the reprint to represent red here. It's been a fantastic deck since it came out in OP09, but 3 of the cards that really make the deck are above super rare rarity. 7 cost Ben Beckman, 8 cost secret rare Silver's Rayleigh from OP08, and of course the big 10 cost Rush Shanks. So to reprint Shanks is a very interesting choice, and you can kind of see it here with the cards that have been reprinted. You're not really spoiled for choice. Lucky Roo and Yasop, the 2 primary rare cards from OP09 in the Redhead Pirates engine, not bad to see them reprinted. But other than that, you've got Hongo as a 2k counter, you've got Lime Juice as another 2k, and your sort of pseudo-unblockable card to be able to sort of grant something Diable Jambe, opponent not being able to activate a blocker on a character that has 4,000 power or less during this turn. But having to reprint 2 Vanillas in Rockstar and Howling Gab, and then use Come On Will Fight You as well. So there's no 1-cost Uta here in the deck. There's none of the Straw Hat type cards that have kind of found a way into Shanks the way it is at the moment, thanks to Starter Deck 21, with the Rush Luffy in particular. There's not too much going on here. When you compare it to, say, the Marshall D. Teach deck and the cards that are being reprinted in that, you are only 2 super rares, really, from being able to operate that deck at nearly full capacity in 5-cost Kuzan and 10-cost Blocker Teach. Here, you're still missing quite a few pieces if you're wanting to try and take this to current format relevancy and current competitive viability. So it then begs the question, well, what do the new cards look like? What do the super rares look like? Because every deck is getting 2 brand new super rares. And I'm sorry to report that for Shanks fans, this really doesn't feel like it. I'll show you what I mean. First one of the super rares is 6-cost Uta. 4,000 power, 2k counter. Okay, interesting stat line. But if you have a character with 10,000 power or more, give this card in your hand -4 cost, and she's a blocker. So she can turn in to a 2-cost 4k blocker on board if you have a character on board with 10,000 power or more. But that creates some problems, right? Because when you're getting to that point in the game, typically as Shanks, when you're playing those 10,000 power or more characters, you're chaining Rush Shankses together. You're chaining those 10 drops to be able to give that blanket -1,000 power effect across your opponent's characters and get that big 12k rushing body. And then, of course, you've got Silver's Rayleigh as well to be able to get a little bit of board control and mitigate some of those attacks that are returning back at you as well. So Uta is... We always like minus cost in hand. That's always a fun little gimmick. But having to stick this 10,000 power or more tag on it feels really, really awkward here. It's a 2k counter, which is always nice. Getting an extra 2k counter is always generally a nice thing. Except when you're playing Shanks, because there's so many instances when you play Shanks that you have the Shanks hand, and you brick with loads of 2k counters and not really much else going off of. For the most part now, Shanks is kind of, as I said earlier in the video, starting to run a bit of a hybrid package with Straw Hat Pirates type cards, with the 5-cost Rush Monkey D. Luffy, with a couple of Nami searches here and there. I know some are even running Radical Beam to help defend, as well as Sanji from OPO1 as an extra 2k counter and a sort of self-life fulfiller if your opponent is trying to starve you in the early game. So now you've got another 2k counter that has a possible cost reduction in hand that is a blocker, okay, cool, but Lucky Roo is a vastly better blocker, being able to KO a base power 6k or less character on your opponent's side of the board. There's also one more big problem with this Uta blocker, and that's that she's a film-type character. She's not red-haired pirates, so you can't even search her in this starter deck, as it is inherently with Come On We'll Fight You, and then you can't search her further with stuff like Nami. So it's a really, really awkward card to include in the deck. I can understand the idea behind it, but I just don't think in execution that it quite works. I mean, even you look at, on the face of it on this structure deck, you've got one character that's got 10,000 power or more at base level, and we'll get to him in a minute. And because he's a super rare in the deck, you'll likely only be getting 2 copies of him. Now, for reference, and to save my bacon for any reason for it to come back and bite me, generally in One Piece card game starter decks, you are only given 2 copies of the brand new super rare, or of one of the 2 super rares that are allotted to the structure deck. Now, we don't quite have the ratios for this deck to confirm whether that trend is going to continue, or whether here these reprint decks are going to buck that trend at all. But you've only got 2 opportunities here at base power level to hit on this -4 cost reduction. Otherwise, it's just another 2k counter in hand. So I'm not convinced on this card at the moment. I definitely can't see it seeing play in Shanks in the future. The same possibly could be said for the other super rare that's coming into this deck. This is 9 cost 10k Shanks, so 9 cost as opposed to 10. Interesting to point out. Its effect, if your opponent has a character with 8,000 base power or more, give this character -3 cost, so potentially a 6 cost 10k body. We don't mind that. That levels things out again. But on play, if your leader has the red-haired pirates type or is Uta, interesting, your leader gains plus 2,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. Next end phase, as the accurate direct wording. So this card does a few different things, and it's really hard for me to pinpoint how strong and how impactful of a card this is. 9 cost 10k is an awful stat line, especially if you're forced to go first as Shanks, playing either Rayleigh on your 9 Don turn, having 1 Don open for Radical Beam, or being able to swing with a Don underneath it on the leader or something like that. Or if you don't have Rayleigh, you can play this, or try and manage and mitigate some kind of option where you can play this out for 6, then leaving you 3 Don open, 2 under leader to swing 7, then leaving that spare Don for something like Beam, is definitely unique. But it's that on-play effect that I can't quite wrap my head around how strong that it is, at least right now. So many of the cards at the moment, and so many of the super rares, and we'll get to Buggy in just a moment, but so many of the super rares have this plus 2,000 power tag on them at the moment from what we've seen. Think back to Monkey D. Luffy. He had that on play and when attacking to be able to get yourself that extra power during your opponent's turn. Here, it's only happening on play. And I just don't know how helpful this is. It's all gearing towards one thing. And that one thing is Gold D. Roger. At the end of the World Championships, for those who are maybe just joining the One Piece card game, the end of the World Championships, we had a big reveal stream and a big wave of news coming in. Part of that news was global synchronization coming to the game, finally. News about OP12, OP13, PRB02 coming out as well. And the final bit of news, or one of the final bits of news, was that Gold D. Roger was coming to the game as a leader, and that he was going to be the game's first ever 7,000 base power leader, which is insane. That's all we really know about the leader so far, other than its color identity as well. It's going to be red and purple. But all of these plus 2,000 power effects seem like it's trying to help balance and try and help press up the other leaders in the game, so that when Roger comes out, he doesn't just take over the entire field. Now, granted, we don't know exactly what Roger does yet. We don't know his starting life as well. There is murmurings and whisperings that to help try and balance Roger's 7k power, he might start on something like 2 life or something. But giving this extra 2,000 power until your end of your opponent's next end phase is going to be a common theme that we're going to be seeing in these super rares in the starter decks. My biggest problem with this one in particular is that it's on play. It happens once. Whereas opposed, you think back to 6-cost Luffy that's in the Purple Black Gear 5 deck that's coming out at the same time. That is on play and when attacking. And it combines so brilliantly with the leader ability because of the Don -2 that you have to pay to activate it. So Shanks is in this really, really awkward kind of limbo here. But it's also useful for a different leader. It's also useful for Uta. And there's 2 Uta leaders that we have in the game so far, at least that are in red. In Promo Uta, well, that's going to be rotated out at the start of next year, thanks to the block rotation that we're going to be getting. And then Red-Purple Uta, which has had a couple of people try and experiment with it in the past. But is this going to have an opportunity now, or grant that leader an opportunity to be fringe playable? I don't think in any stretch of the imagination that it's going to be tier 1 or even tier 2. But could it maybe pilot you to a 5-5 record at 10-round regionals? Possibly. Very, very possibly. But at the moment, with these 2 cards being the headline super rares, I'm really, really not convinced. And the convincing doesn't really continue there, because the rest of the cards in this deck just feel like they're behind the curve. We've got Ben Beckman here, who's a 4-cost 5k common card, which on play lets you trash 1 card from your hand, and if your leader has the red-haired pirate's type, you can KO an opponent's character with base 4k power or less. Okay, not bad. But we've got Lucky Roo, who does it on KO and gets up to a 6,000 power base character or less. And it's a blocker, so you've got more agency about how the ability activates. And you don't lose the card in hand to proc the ability either. Your opponent, anytime that they see Lucky Roo on the board, or at least I know for myself, thinks, okay, I've got to find some kind of way to play around this. And if I'm not playing blue, for example, that has access to bottom decking in either Houndblaze or Red Rock or Gravblade Raging Tiger, depending on what deck that I'm playing, I've got to be very, very selective about what I attack with and in what order, so that I don't lose important characters that I want around in the early game. Here, this card just doesn't feel like it's doing enough. Yes, you can attack with it quite freely at that 5k base, but as I say, when you've got Lucky Roo, And you've got him in the starter deck as well. I understand if he wasn't reprinted in the structure deck, but he is. So I'm just really, really confused at what Beckman is trying to achieve here. The same can be said as well for Monkey D. Luffy, another common card in the starter deck. 1 cost 2k. Activate main. You may rest one of your Don cards, so pay 1, and this character, to give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 1000 power during this turn. So you're losing 1 Don. You're granting your opponent an easy attack target, with it being a 2k power body, to minus 1k something during your turn, to then swing into it, maybe? It just doesn't feel like, considering we've got cards like Gordon and Raise Max that bottom deck themselves and minus 3k, for where we should be going in the One Piece card game with this starter deck in particular. I'm not talking, obviously, talking about that is a generalization statement, but at least with this starter deck, we're supposed to be moving forward. We're supposed to be powering up. This feels like a massive, massive step back. And again, obviously, correctly so, it's not Redhead Pirates type. It's not searchable in this structure deck. It's Straw Hat Crew type. Okay, great. That helps with our current format that we've got Shanks in at the moment. It's film type. So Red Purple Uta's leaving again. But it just feels so underwhelming, especially considering where we started with the first 2 decks that got revealed. Purple Black Luffy, okay, there was some sauce in there. There was some spice. Not everything was a home run. But there was some interesting stuff to work with. Marshall D. Teach, every single new card in that deck felt unbelievable. Commons, rares, and super rares alike. This, at the moment, there's not one card so far that I've spoken about that I've thought, okay, Shanks could play this in the future. The one difference that I will give, and this is the one card that I think will give Shanks a little bit of help, or will see play potentially in Shanks, is Yasop. Yasop is essentially 1 cost Nami for Redhead Pirates type. Activate main once per turn, give up to 1 rested Don to your leader or one of your characters. I love the utilization and reusing Don, of being able to reuse rested Don. And Yasop, being in Red Pirates type, yes, it's a 1k power character, yes, it's a 1 cost, so it's very easy and very susceptible to removal. But if you can get it on board, even if you just pay the 1 for it, and you use that 1 rested Don to be able to help go under, I don't know, a dragon or something like that, and really just help try and get that final number over the line, or put it underneath Rush Luffy so that you can use the other rested Don elsewhere. I like this card. This is the one card in this deck that I go, okay, I'm fully on board with this. But as for the rest, this feels like quite a letdown. If I'm a Shanks player, if I'm a Red player at heart, I'm looking elsewhere, especially with what's coming up in the format. I'm looking at Zoro. I'm looking potentially at PRB Sanji. I'm not looking at any of these cards in Shanks that are brand new. I'm just playing it bog standard, if I'm totally honest with you. Apart from maybe the Yasop, but yeah, it's not fantastic. Not fantastic. This definitely feels like overall is one of the weaker decks, or one of the weaker card lists that we've seen so far. But we've got 3 more left to go, and thankfully we've got another one to be able to look at in this video. So, if Shanks, with his great expectation, has fallen short, what about the underdog of Buggy the Clown? So, let's move on to Buggy the Clown then, shall we? The deck that has kind of taken over as one of the lovable underdogs and lovable rogue decks of the One Piece card game. Being able to activate main, rest 5 of your Don cards and trash 1 from hand, and play out a cross-guild type character from your hand. So that's no restriction. So you can play out guys like the 10 cost Buggy, I'm happy to report, is being reprinted in the structure deck to just immediately bottom deck something for 1 Don cheaper than a red rock, and then be able to put itself back into the bottom of the deck as well. You've got cards like Alvida in here that on KO can play out another cross-guild type character or another 5-cost or less type character. You've got Kabaji, which can't be KO'd in battle if you have Emoji on board. Really, really interesting card. Really, really fun card. You've got Vanilla Daz Bones. You've got Richie. You've got Galdino and Cross-Guild as your searchers. Not bad in terms of the reprints here. Again, we're at a similar level here as we were with the Teach deck to start off with, in being you're just missing a couple of super rares here to be able to pilot this deck at full capacity already. Croc and Mihawk are the cards that you're looking for. One thing that really stands out to me, and I am shocked that Bandai have done this, is that the Buggy promo from the OP10 release event is getting a reprint in this starter deck. This is really, really interesting. This is a really crazy decision that Bandai have taken here, and crazy in a good way. I'm very, very on board with this card being reprinted, especially considering with the OP11 release event, there are going to be more cross-guild type characters that are getting brought in as promos alongside this and a structure deck battle event that is going to be able to be held as well. I think it's another Croc and Mihawk from the top of my head. I'll edit the cards in somewhere around the screen so you have a visual representation of what they do. But the fact that this card is being reprinted here, and again, we don't quite know ratios of the deck. You are going to need to buy 2 of them anyway to get a full playset of 4 of the super rares. That's how it traditionally is. But the fact that we're getting the Buggy promo, big, big thumbs up from me. So what do the other cards look like? What are we getting that's new? Well, to start off with, we've got Alvida, a new Alvida. 4-cost, 5k body. If you have 2 or more characters with base cost of 5 or more, this character gains 1 cost, so making it a 5 that is needed for some different characters on the board. So for Buggy itself for the 10 cost. But its ability, on play, if your leader is Buggy, draw 3 and trash 2 from hand. Interesting. Draw 3, trash 2 has been in the game for a couple of times, originally with Shirahoshi, all the way back in OP03, as a 5-cost 0,000 power body. To have it here, type locked, and on a 5k body, is very, very interesting. I'm not sure whether it's quite strong enough to be able to be played, because you're having to trash 2 cards from hand. So the nuts draw that you're looking for is probably Mr. 3 or Cross Guild to be able to search early, then Pilaf on turn 2, or hit a Pilaf trigger from the first attack that you take to replenish that hand some more, and then Buggy leader ability. But that extra filter is definitely very interesting, and especially if you are forced to 10-cost Buggy early, or in a situation where you don't have the 5 or more bodies on board to have it stick, you can try and find it again later on in the game. So, to me, this isn't screaming auto-include, but maybe there's some scope here to work with. Then we've got Kabaji. Now, Kabaji, stat line-wise, just on the face of it, looks extremely underwhelming. 4-cost 1k body with a 2k counter. You immediately look at those 3 numbers and go, that's not for me really, Chief. Maybe for the 2k counter. But if you have 2 or more characters with a base of 5 cost or more, it becomes a blocker and +1 cost. So again, we're manipulating costs and going up to that 5 level. And then during your opponent's turn, this character gains 5,000 power. So it becomes a 4-cost 6k blocker. And those stat lines will feel very familiar to players who have played the One Piece card game for quite some time. Those are Blocker Borsalino stat lines. Of course, you don't here get the inability to be removed by effects, but at least it's a cheap boosted blocker that you can get out on board. And particularly here, with it having that 4 cost, you can get it on board on turn 2. Buggy thrives on being able to go first, so that you can Buggy ability on turn 3, on 5 Dawn, and play out your Croc into Mihawk combo, or your Croc into Buggy, or something of that kind of nature. Or even just play 7 cost Buggy on its own, to then play a 6 drop from hand as well. So Kabaji's a very, very interesting one. Again, doesn't immediately scream out to me, but that 2k counter definitely is going to help it, and the fact that it's a 6k blocker is definitely going to help it as well. You are typically a little light on blockers in Buggy. It's really only Mihawk and Richie that you tend to play. So I don't mind this card. I certainly don't mind this card, and we're off to a pretty decent winning start, at the very least when compared to Shanks. Now we get into one of our 2 super rares in the deck. We've got Crocodile and Mihawk. If you thought playing Croc into Mihawk was bad enough when you're facing Buggy, now you've got both of them coming together. So Croc and Mihawk is an 8 cost 7k body, which on play allows you to draw 2 and trash 1 from hand, then play up to 1 cross-guild type character card with a cost of 4 or less in your hand. That certainly helps out here. But then, also, once per turn, if your cross-guild type character will be removed from the field by your opponent's effect, you may trash 1 card from your hand instead. This is really interesting. I don't mind this card. I'm slightly on the fence and slightly reserved about it, purely for the fact that, number 1, it's an 8 cost 7k body. Yes, you can play it off of the Buggy ability and bring a 4 cost or less with you, but is that enough off of Buggy ability? Possibly. Drawing 2 and trashing 1 from hand, filter's always great. Some Buggy lists used to run the Mr. 1 from Extra Booster 1, the Memorial Collection, that was the 5 cost that let you draw 2 and trash 1 from hand. So, filter's always good, and we're bringing a friend with us, which is always good. The once per turn removal protection, I think, is going to be very, very dependent on how the format progresses. Right now, we're in a situation where removal is prevalent, but not consistent, it feels like. We're not in the Sakazuki era or the Lucci dominant era where we're worried about everything getting removed off the board, every single feasible possibility, and we're not going to have a chance really to respond. I certainly could see this getting played. That trash 1 from hand feels just like a little... You're relying on a lot of pilafs there to help get yourself a nice full hand early on, or taking some early damage to get a nice full hand. But it's not a bad card. It's certainly not a bad card. 7k is a magic number, and will continue to be as well as we continue on through the future of the One Piece card game. We've already mentioned Roger. This hits Roger without having to attach any Don. So, Croc and Mihawk, not bad. Then we've got 4 cost Buggy. 4 cost 1k character, 1k counter. Activate main, you may trash 1 card from your hand and trash this character. If your leader is Buggy, play up to 1 cross-guild type character with a cost of 6 or less from hand. I really don't know how to feel. And maybe it's because I haven't played Buggy. I've played against Buggy. I've played against Buggy many times in my local area. And I know how impactful and how quick this deck can go. But all of this forcing to trash a card out from hand is rough. At least with this Buggy, you essentially get leader ability if you're forced to go second, which does feel really, really great. It is restricted to 6 cost or less, but at least you get that opportunity to get a strong body out on board on turn 2 if you're forced to go second. So it's pretty good. It is pretty good. And of course, it is cross-guild searchable, so it can be found off of Mr. 3 and found off of the Cross Guild event as well. So 4-cost Buggy certainly I think is going to be played, or is more likely to be played, I think, than Croc and Mihawk. I think Croc and Mihawk is maybe just a little bit too expensive. But 4-cost Buggy, I think, thinking about it out loud, is a pretty strong card. I'm liking this the more that I'm looking at it. So yeah, Buggy feels like it might be going in a pretty decent place here as well, especially with those aforementioned extra promos that are going to be coming out in the coming weeks. Finally, we've got one last card to talk about, and that is Moji. Again, we're playing with this 4-cost 1000 power base level character. It is also a 2k counter that grants blocker to itself if you have 2 or more characters with a base cost of 5 or more on board. And then on KO, if your leader is Buggy and you have 3 or less cards in your hand, you draw 1. So on KO, agency here, with being able to turn it into a blocker, is nice. Refreshing your hand or getting yourself an extra card in hand, very, very nice, especially with all the trashing that it seems like Bandai are wanting you to do, or how they're wanting you to play Buggy with these new cards. And then a 2k counter as well. So Moji isn't bad. Again, I'm not 100% sure how many copies of Moji are going to be played, or if this card is going to be played at all over, say, this Moji, for example, to be able to search top 5, grab a Richie and play it. And this is also a 2k counter and a 5000 power base body. I suppose it just depends on how much you value the aggression as Buggy, whether you want to turn it into quite a aggressive go wide swarm deck, or whether you want to be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more mid-rangey here with a couple of these blockers. But Buggy certainly is eating pretty good from this structure deck. It's certainly better than the Shanks deck is. From what we've seen at the moment, from what I've seen at the moment, I think if we had to rank them, the 4 that we've seen all of the cards for, Teach undoubtedly at the top, if we're talking just straight out of the box power, and combine that with future-proofing it, Teach is just leagues ahead. Buggy maybe comes second, I think. I think there's a lot more cards that are immediately impactful. I have the scope to be immediately impactful here against Purple Black Luffy, and the fact that you're getting this reprinted in the deck as well is a huge win. So this probably second, Luffy probably third, and then I don't know what they've done to Shanks. Yeah, this is not support for the Red Hair Pirates attribute, which will feel very unfortunate and feel very rough for fans of Mono Red. But hey, you never know. There might be some cool new things that are coming in the horizon. So at this point, it's over to you. Let me know what you think. Was I wrong about anything? Is Shanks actually really good still, and in fact gets even better with this support? Am I sleeping on Buggy and some of these cards that I've made comments on already? By all means, let me know. Drop into the comments below and tell me what decks you are going to be excited to play post OP11 and starter deck format. Be sure to drop a subscription as well. We will be gearing up and continuing coverage of everything One Piece card game, as well as plenty of other games. Stay tuned to the channel for a video in just a couple of days' time about a certain brand new card game that's coming from the makers of One Piece. But most importantly, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and until the next time, see you soon.